name's Josh Ward, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the difference between discipline and motivation and why you should be more concerned with your discipline than your motivation. Today, to start off, we've got a quote from Aristotle that says, "Through discipline comes freedom," and in the bottom corner, we've got a reminder to stay consistent, the importance of consistency, which we'll get into later in this presentation. So our first slide is going to be defining what exactly is discipline, right? Well, the dictionary defines discipline as to train oneself to do something in a controlled or habitual way. There are two different kinds of discipline. There's external and internal. So external, let's say you steal a car and then you get arrested and go to jail for it. That's external discipline. It's an external punishment from a source that is not yourself for an action that you did. Internal discipline, however, is more related to our own personal accountability, our ability to get things done when we really don't want to, and I feel that it's one of the most important parts of human beings in general. So for the next slide, we're going to be talking about what happens in the absence of motivation. Well, when you don't have motivation, your discipline is forced into overdrive. You have no choice but to just grind through it if you want to get it done. So we also have a quote here. I'm going to turn the laptop so I can read it because I really didn't want to write it down on my notes. But motivation doesn't last forever, and it's not motivation that's going to get you up when you don't feel like getting up to work towards achieving your goal that you set for yourself. That's by Hamza Khan from a LinkedIn article that I found. Relying on motivation alone will definitely ensure that you get work done, but you're only going to get work done when you really want to do it. And how often do we really want to do the work that we have to do? So you just kind of got to push through it, and that's where discipline kicks in. That's where your internal discipline takes over, and you just get it done. You know, motivation's great, but it's not controllable. It's not something that we can make happen. Sadly, I would really love if it was. So after this, we're going to be talking about the habit loop. The habit loop is the key to overcoming your problems with motivation. So I actually have another quote on here that I'm going to have to turn around for. This is a paraphrase of a article that I found from Charles Duhigg of Hofstra University. He says, "Each habit has a cue, a routine, and some sort of a reward. The cue triggers the brain to complete a routine, and the reward reinforces the habit. If the reward's beneficial, then the brain subconsciously stores the habit loop for future use." So we'll use the example of being hungry, right? So your cue is you're hungry, your stomach rumbles, you're like, oh, I gotta eat some food, right? And then the routine is you go to the cafeteria, you get some food, and then your reward for that is no longer being hungry, being full, feeling satisfied, and not having to worry about that issue anymore. So for the next slide, we're going to be talking about how you can hijack the system that we have for your own benefit, basically. So the first step to this is you need to establish a need for whatever you need to do. So you just need to acknowledge that this is a thing that you have to do, whether you want to do it or not. The second thing you got to do, work on it. Do it. It's hard, but it's just something that you got to do. But the thing that you work towards is the reward. So if you have to take a test, right, and you really don't want to do it, you have to acknowledge that you have to take the test. You have to study for the test. But what do you do after that? You have to reward yourself, because that creates a positive feedback loop in your brain. So go get a coffee, or go get a bag of burgers from Brahms, whatever you want to do. That you just have to reward yourself, because it's the dopamine from the reward that sets in that habit loop. So for the next slide, we're going to be talking about the ancients and how they already knew a lot of this. I mean, yeah. We've got some more quotes here too. They're from some pretty old people. So from the first one, we've got the one that I have on the title slide. It's "Through Discipline Comes Freedom" by Aristotle. So whenever you become disciplined and you are able to consistently do things, whether you want to do them or not, not, it saves you from the freedom of having to worry about those things. The second quote we've got is, "The person who masters himself through self-control and discipline is truly undefeatable." That's by Buddha. I feel like that very much exemplifies how when we're able to control ourselves and do the things that we need to do, whether we want to do them or not, we can become the better versions of ourselves. Our last quote is, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It's all within yourself and your way of thinking." That's by Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, a classic Stoic figure. That was in regards to ruling over the population of Rome, and how if you didn't keep yourself in check and didn't discipline yourself, you could become something that you didn't want to become. Essentially live long enough to see yourself become a villain. So yeah, in the bottom we just have a reminder here that we need to emulate the great, and the ancients were people too. We all live through the same kind of things. So the next slide, we're going to be talking about the relevance of this information today. So, got another quote again. "It is mental discipline which most of us really need to master. In fact, this mastering is an ongoing process. Are we not all maturing at different rates, to be sure, and growing into the people we need to be in order to succeed? Readers of classical wisdom know what the answer should be, and it's a resounding yes." This source also describes the act of self-discipline as weightlifting for our minds, which I found very accurate, because that's pretty much what it feels like. Many ancient philosophers have talked about discipline and controlling yourself throughout all of history, and who are we to ignore the teachings of the past, you know? I mean, yeah, there are a bunch of old people that were alive in an entirely different world, but we're all still people. We're all wired the same either way. So, yeah, I think there's definitely something to learn from these guys. And to conclude, I hope that you found this presentation valuable, and I hope that you try and implement these principles a little bit more in your daily life, or at least, think about them, and you'll start recognizing patterns, So I've just got a few reminders for you. Don't rely on your motivation too much. It's really great. It gets things done when it's there, but you can't make it happen, and it's not consistent enough to be the only driving force to getting things done. The second one is to use the habit loops. If there's one thing to take out of this, it's to use your habit loops, because they work forwards and backwards. So let's say you've got a bad habit. If you don't want that bad habit to perpetuate, all you have to do is eliminate the reward from that cycle. And over time, as you do that, your brain will work it backwards. It works the same way in the other direction for positive feedback loops. So if you want to get an entire PowerPoint presentation done throughout the week, all you have to do is acknowledge that you have to do it, go do it, and then reward yourself afterwards, and your brain will no longer dread doing that thing. I actually very much enjoyed this presentation. This was a lot of useful information. The last reminder that I have for you, though, is if you're ever in doubt or you're questioning whether you're good enough, you just have to remember that all people throughout history have dealt with the same things that we have. Everybody's had problems with self-discipline, even these old people that were talking about it earlier, that have entire books written about it. There's a reason they have books written about it, because they struggled with it and they managed to come over it. So, yeah. I really hope you enjoyed that presentation. This next slide is just my bibliography and my sources, and thank you.